Oh, I see.
That's all right. Okay. So, just leading on and segue, strange word, segueing into Mark. Segueing into Mark. One of my favourite spells is Christmas presents.
Yeah.
Because Christmas presents, and Darren mentioned this, it's the hard T that they put in there, which has created the spell. Christmas presents is actually, if you get into the deep esoteric knowledge, is all about the Kundalini. Nice segue there. Yeah.
Oh.
And the Shumna.
Right.
And the chimney. And Santa Claustrum. Am I not wrong? So, presents, Christmas presents. You are present in the now, in that precious moment that's in the now. So, I'm not going to go on any longer. Mark is the man for today. He is, who knows Mark? Does anybody know Mark here? Does anybody know Mark's work?
Not many.
Mark is the embodiment, as all the men who stood up here today, of what he does, and he is referred to as the Kundalini King. I would definitely go along with that. Anybody who has any questions about this beautiful life force that is the Kundalini, Mark is your man. I met him at Sundara Festival. I'd love to spend more time with him. He is absolutely a star. Mark, take it away.
Wow. Thanks, Eli. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Mark Keane, and in case you don't know who I am, I'll say a little bit about how I've ended up standing before you today. So about 20 years ago, I had a spiritual awakening, which was all spawned by my interest in ancient Egypt. And I was particularly fascinated by the Great Pyramid of Egypt at Giza and why they built it. And it was this intensity of inquiry into my mind on a particular evening that caused this eruption of light. And then I realized that it was basically all to do with light. Everything that the pyramid was designed to do was to download, very much like the divine masculine energy, a cosmic energy, solar energy, these primal currents down into the land of Egypt, which in those days was known as Kemet. And so it was almost like a memory, like a soul memory, like whoever would go into those chambers, especially the king's chamber, and lie in what we now call the sarcophagus, that granite kind of box, would receive the full download of all of that energy. And it's like in that moment, I was receiving the download like I was actually in the Great Pyramid, which I obviously then did myself a few months later. I just had to, didn't I, really? And that light that was in my body fully, like probably everybody's had similar experiences, but this was mine, how I got into this journey much more consciously. I mean, obviously we're always on that journey. And yeah, it lasted 2 weeks, I would say, in that state. And in that 24-hour period from that illumination, I straight away got guided to work with the Kundalini energy. And specifically Kundalini yoga, as well as alchemy and Kabbalah. But what I really liked about the Kundalini yoga, which I did about less than a week later, was that it's very physical. I'm a very physical person. I've always been a dancer. I would say I was born to dance. That's pretty much what I was living to do at the time. For Friday night, I would just dance right through the whole weekend until about 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I think, bloody hell, but get some sleep for Monday morning. Back to work again. Wait for Friday, you know. So that was that's what I relate to. I relate to doing things with my body as much as I do with the mind. And yeah, so when I did that Kundalini yoga, this light that I was already feeling, in my whole body, my whole being, just got ramped up. Like I say about 10 times. And I thought, bloody hell, I was feeling good before. Now it was almost like, like too much to handle. I had so much joy. It was really incredible. I thought, my God, I haven't even taken any drugs today. This is confession. I was taking ecstasy in those days, and this was better, and it doesn't. There's no come down, and it just keeps going. Oh, wow. And part of me always knew that this was possible, and that's kind of like what I was looking for, if you like. Even in those days, every fourth time I would go out dancing, I would go straight. And I would see how close can I get to that feeling. I'm wearing the same, my friends are the same, the music's the same, DJ's the same, I'm dancing in the same way. And it was probably roughly about 2/3. But there was just that extra bit, which I wasn't getting. But then I remember having this conversation with myself. Like I'm in the club, I don't know if any of you are old ravers, but I remember the lasers were coming across. I'm like, this is before, right? And I would reach for the lasers, and you could feel the lasers and going right through your body. Oh my God, this is God. Like this. And then the critical mind goes, right, A, God does not exist. And B, if he did exist, it wouldn't be in a laser in a club in London. Shut the fuck up. And pardon my French. So that's where I was coming from. But so this feeling was something which has really stayed with me right through the last 20 years, and it has guided me to be here today to work with the Kundalini energy. And so I can tell you that the Kundalini yoga is an incredible thing. I didn't really understand why it worked. As I say, a week later, I just knew that it worked. And I always say it took roughly about 3 years for the penny to drop, where I kind of really embodied it in a way that I guess my mind had actually caught up with the experience, like fully. And then obviously it's a journey more and more and more where it goes deeper on all the levels. So the last time, if you caught my last talk, was mostly about the Kundalini yoga. I'm not going to talk as much about that specific tradition, other than it really does do what it says on the tin. It really does wake up that Kundalini. And what that Kundalini is really why we're here. Like we wouldn't be here without it. We've been talking a lot about words, and Kundalini is kind of a strange word, but it is just the life force that animates us. But it's more than that, because life is a journey, and we're all on this journey of conscious evolution, and the force for that conscious evolution is this Kundalini force. And so it does need a little bit of help to go on to this journey, especially when we have so much of the game is rigged that we've just been talking about, to stop us from this being a natural, beautiful process of unfoldment into the light. And so very quickly, I think in that same period of that first week or 2 weeks, I was like, wow, well, this really does work. This yoga is really incredible. This connection is really incredible. But but I was getting that kind of anyway through the dance, a little bit of help, but I was mostly getting them myself. What was I doing? I was focusing on the breath. I was staying present. When my thoughts would come in and start to bum me out about the day I'd had in work, I would go, no, not till Monday morning. Go away. And I was doing some sort of mastery of the body and the mind, emotions and the breath and all this anyway. And so then I decided, has anyone ever thought about Kundalini dance, rather than Kundalini yoga? And then I literally just searched it, and then I found out that there was a lady doing Kundalini dance in Australia. So I went out to Australia and learnt that. So these are the two things I'm most sort of famous for teaching the last 20 years, is Kundalini yoga and Kundalini dance. But I would say it's the dance is really, it's so complementary to the yoga. The yoga is very, I would say that's very masculine. It's very much like, you do this very specific thing, like breath, very specific mantra, very specific body movement, asana, all these things. If you were here the last talk, if you know anything about yoga, you'll know what I'm talking about. You do it in a very specific way. The sequence is set. Certainly the way that Kundalini yoga is taught, right, that I teach it. I mean, some yoga is more fluid, but Kundalini yoga is not fluid. It's very much, in terms of the structure, it's set. You can't change it. So I see that more as sort of a masculine approach, whereas the Kundalini dance that I've been doing is very the opposite. It's more I call divine feminine. It's very flowing. It's how you feel. There's no real structure. But then with that freedom, then the energy really does get its permission, if you like, to do incredible things. So I would say that's the balance that I've been blessed to have in 20 years of these two, not sort of complementary, I don't want to say polar opposite, but complementary for techniques that I've been working with. So I didn't really mention that much last time, so I want to be really clear. The dance is incredible, and I think dance is really something perhaps which we all kind of know is important, but all the cultures all around the world through all of time have always used dance in some form to connect to the divine. And now, like a lot of these things, they're sort of relegated to other forms of society like recreation or entertainment, or my favorite one is fantasy. All the things that relegate to fantasy, I would say that's the reality. We're living in the fantasy. Everything's been inverted. So we're going to talk a lot about, more about that. So yeah, so I want to talk a little bit more about with that process of working with the energy, your creative energy comes through, and it's like more the unfoldment of why we're here starts to become clearer. So I'm going to start to bring that into this talk now. So in order to do that, I need to explain three things that have happened to me over the years, and about what I'm going to talk about. So the first thing was I had this lucid dream, and I don't know if any of you know Charlie Morley, who's, I would say, the best lucid dream teacher that I've come across anyway. And he was doing this lucid dream retreat on the Holy Isle, which is off the island of Arran in Scotland. And I was there for about 5 days learning lucid dreaming. And if any of you are interested in this topic, I do recommend him. He is incredible. And I remember... Well, what you do, you go in, you have some sleep. You get your the principle is you get your 5 hours sleep, and that's what the body needs. And then the rest of the time is more about what the mind is doing. So that's time which you can allocate for lucid dreaming. So you get your 5 hours sleep, then you all go into the dream temple, and then you get gradually and gracefully brought into this sort of lucid state, and where lucid dreaming becomes hopefully relatively autonomous. And in this case, I suddenly woke up, and I was still in the dorm, and everybody was gone around me. I thought, oh my God, shit, I've missed it. They've all gone into the dream temple without me. Oh no. I was like, why would they leave me like just lying there? And I was like, hold on a minute. They wouldn't just leave me lying there. They were dead. And I was like, and then suddenly I realized, I was outside the dream temple. I was like, oh, I'm outside the dream temple, of course. Hold on a minute. Well, why am I not in the dream temple? Oh yeah, there I am. Huh? What? And suddenly I'm feeling my body for the first time, physically in that space. And I'm like, holy shit, but I'm dreaming. I'm having a lucid dream. I was like, right, so the idea is if you have a dream plan, but if you don't have a dream plan, and I didn't have a dream plan, you ask the dream to show you something important. And so I just sort of imagine myself in this town square, like a sort of, I don't know why, like a sort of medieval kind of European square, and I just shouted out to the dreaming mind, show me something important! Like that. Just scream at it, just so you'd be, very clear. And then with that, this huge, like, gigantic serpent just appeared, like, and I was like, wow. And then I knew to kind of get on this serpent. All right, okay, here we go. And then we just shot literally into space, like flying, like the Earth is way behind, we're going up, we've got the Star Wars music going, all the stars flying, where are we going? And then got a bit nervous. I was like, holy shit, is this safe to actually leave the Earth behind so quickly? And in that moment, I felt my physical body again. I'm like, oh, I'm still in my body in the dream temple. Brilliant, I can come back to my body whenever I want. All right, brilliant. And so, I flew into outer space on this serpent. And this is what I realize is a very, very important thing that the Kundalini is really there to do, that we've lost touch with. And certainly not something that's talked about in the Kundalini yoga tradition that I'm aware of. I never heard Yogi Bhajan mention this. But I think that for me, this is really the key. So then there's another story which is linking into this, what I'm kind of saying, is I was in France with a friend of mine who's a shaman or shamaness, and her name's Becky, and we were in the car, and she said, I really want to take you to this really beautiful, mystical place. And she said, Mark, if you don't find your dragon there, you won't find your dragon anywhere. And I thought to myself, what? We weren't even talking about dragons, but she knew that I needed to find my dragon. And I was like, all right. And then we got there, and there was like this, it's almost like there was a huge waterfall that should have been there, but it wasn't, because it was summer, maybe it dried up. So you got this kind of cascade, and it's very mossy, and all these kind of trees growing over, very Lord of the Rings, either with caves. And I was like, right, I'm going to go into the cave to find my dragon. And she went into the cave. And I went, God, that's a bit cheeky. You're taking up the cave, and this is meant to be my moment to find my dragon. So I was a bit pissed off. But anyway, I thought, right, I don't know if you work with spirits, so I was like, right, okay. To the spirit of this place, thank you for your presence, thank you for your grace. My name's Mark Keane, I'm a Welsh wizard, and I'm here to find my dragon. And please, when you show this dragon to me, can you do it in a physical way, a sign that I will know that you're there? Because, it's obviously not necessarily going to appear physically. Right. And then I found this little place, and it was perfect. Up on the top of the not the mountain, the waterfall, and we have to climb to get to it. There was this beautiful little cave, about this big, and a little kind of mini waterfall, and then the water came down and into this pool by the cave. And I thought, wow, that is perfect. It looked exactly like how I'd imagine a dragon to be living in there. But I thought, well, hold on a minute, but it's not very big. Dragons need to be a bit bigger than that. And then I had this lower mind, higher mind conversation going on all the time, as we all do, I'm sure. And then the higher self was like, it doesn't matter. They're in another dimension. I was like, oh yeah, okay. I was like, well, what do I do now? Higher mind goes, Mark, you know what to do. I was like, oh yeah. So I'm like, okay, visualize. We're going in. We're going to find the dragon. So I'm going in. I'm using my imagination to imagine that I'm going into this dragon cave to find my dragon. And then, I'm sort of imagining, he's in there. I can feel the flames kind of on the, the side of the cavern, this sort of thing. I'm using my imagination as you would in a visualization exercise. And then, I crossed the threshold. I was like, shit, I'm no longer in my imagination. It's a very subtle thing. But when you feel it, you realize I am now in the dragon cave. And then I met my dragon, and, I won't tell you too much about the experience other than I knew it on a deep inner knowing way that it was real. But despite that, you still have this little part of you that's like, well, how do you know it's real? I was like, and for some reason, I just opened my eyes in that moment. And I opened my eyes, and I'm back in the place I described with the little pool and the cave and the little waterfall. And it drops off because it's the cascade. And then I got my peripheral vision, right, like this. And then I just see this movement here. I'm like, huh? And I'm like, what? And then up, it wasn't there, then it appears, came a snake. And I'm like, and I hadn't seen a snake for years and years and years, and I didn't see one for years and years and years after that. So it's not like, I was seeing them every day as another snake. Like, it is like that in some places I've lived, but not in near France. And it came, towards me, and I was absolutely still. I was like, wow. A serpent for me and a dragon, these are synonymous. A snake and a serpent and a dragon, they're all the same thing. I was like, give me something that I will know. That is for me. My website is sleepingserpent.com. Another plug. So, yeah, and then it literally comes right opposite me. I swear to God, it goes like that. Just as and then he goes, get this, into the pool. I'd never seen this in my life happen. A snake go into water. Snakes his way through the water and then into the cave. What? I've still not seen that since. And then I couldn't see him, but he was there. This was a physical thing, But, they disappear into the cracks. And I was just left there going, he's gone. And it just completely blew me away. So this is another sort of a very key story for me, starting to make sense of what my destiny is, right, on this planet. And what I feel is very, very important, which is something which we have lost, which is the Kundalini is designed to do. Third experience was in Wales, where I grew up, very close to where I grew up. I grew up in Newport. There's a place called Tynton. I don't know if you know the Wye Valley, Tynton Abbey around there. There's a place up there called Botany Bay in Capra. And it's private land, but my friend had experiences there. He said, I just feel there's energy there, there's a spring, there's been a subsidence of the land, and there's a crack in the earth, and the energy is very strong. He said Claire, his girlfriend, is seeing ghosts, and she doesn't even believe in ghosts, and he didn't really believe in much either, but he says, I want to see what you make of it, if you go. I was all right. So I went there, and he went off for a walk, left me alone, and I was like, all right, let's try it. So I just bent my legs down, breathed into the base of my spine, opened up my peripheral vision, and I'm like, repeat the mantra, see beyond the veil, see beyond the veil, see beyond the veil, and then I was gone. Literally left the world completely behind this time, not just a lucid dream, and I had transcended time and space completely, and I just felt like I was floating in the ether. Or it felt like I was actually had the angels side by side with me, and I was being taken to see God. This is what I felt like. I mean, I did have a Catholic upbringing. So I don't know if that's how my mind was translating it. And the voice was speaking to me. It was like, most beautiful thing I've ever heard. I was like, finally, yeah, we're doing this. I'm ready. And then it was suddenly like, listen to my voice, follow my voice, hear my voice, follow my. I'm like, what? Yeah, okay. And I'm following the voice, and then suddenly, boom, I'm back in the room. I'm back in the field. And I'm like, God, what's happened? Where am I? I didn't know, what's going on? Am I in Bristol? Have I gone for a walk? This used to happen to me a lot, but this is the first time that someone's witnessed this. My friend was looking over me. He looking very kind of concerned but kind. And I was like, who are you? I didn't recognize my best friend. It was the most ugly thing I'd ever seen, because I just come from the most beautiful, serene, blissful, the angels going to see. And just the sight of a physical human being was just so gross, And no offense to my best friend. This was just, anyone would have looked like that. And he just kind of looked so shocked. He was like, what? When I said, who are you? So my best mate. And I quickly had to recalibrate. Oh, yeah. I'm Mark. He's Paul. I'm in Wales. Yeah, that's right. And then it all came back. And then I was like, well, why did you stop me? And he was like, you were having an epileptic fit. I was like, no, I wasn't. He says, yeah, you were. I said, no, I wasn't. And this went on for a while. And he was like, we're going to the hospital. You have an epileptic fit. I was like, no, I wasn't. I'm working with a Kundalini. I know what it is. He goes, no, you weren't. I said, was I moving erratically? Bear in mind, I've never seen myself do this, right? To this day. Or was I moving in a kind of uniform way? He says, you look like an epileptic dolphin. So I was moving like that. Yeah, I was being a pure and clear conduit for the serpentine cosmic spiral energy, the serpentine energy. So it pulses and waves through all of life. And I was completely without resistance in that moment to that. And that's what that was. And after a while, I convinced him of this fact. And what I realized is that, what we call temporal lobe epilepsy is actually very similar to these very advanced trance states where you surrender yourself fully to the Kundalini. And when you learn to do that consciously, you can go anywhere. And this is really what I want to focus on, because I don't hear many people talking about this. Is that, there's one thing where you meditate to do something, there's one thing where you lucid dream to do something. This is another thing entirely. This is our shamanic heritage that I'm sure everyone used to know. That's been eradicated by these waves of what we might call colonialism, whatever it is. It's been happening for a long time. I'm not pointing any fingers here, but it's just reality. So I mentioned I'm from Wales, so and then I started to look again at the poem by Taliesin, the 5th century bard, who was really drawing upon the ancient druidic wisdom, which was passing away from memory at the time that the Christian revolution started to happen in Wales at that time, which was very strong in Wales in the 5th century, for some reason. It was a real period of learning in those days, St. David's around there. Anyway, so this, I don't know if you know this poem, The Spoils of, I say Annwn, but so it's talking about King Arthur going into the other worlds, all right? The Celtic other world is what we're talking about. So I created this system based on when I reread that poem, and I realized this is talking about King Arthur, Pendragon, riding the back of the dragon and going into these 7 places which were altered states of consciousness. They're described as islands, they're described as spinning, and they're described as castles or fortresses, right? So it's talking about the chakras, right? And I always say you can't separate the chakras from the Kundalini in the same way that you can't separate the dragon and King Arthur Pendragon specifically from the Kairu, which is the name for what we might call the Celtic chakras, the Welsh chakras, the British chakras, let's say. Because what is sort of remaining in some way in Wales is the heritage of Britain, right? Before the waves of all the people that have come here since then, since the Romans and so on. So, am I making sense so far? Yeah. All right, cool. So then I'm looking again at this poem and I'm thinking, why does it not make sense? It's because the order is not linear. And then there's a woman, I think it was Ellen Sentio, who wrote this book on the Celtic chakras, and I met her when I was part of Avalon Rising. I still am, but we haven't done much recently. Is that you start here, you don't start at the base. So this is the Kaya city. Okay, and this is where you start. So this is connected to the word for the cities, the powers that we get in yoga, which give us that sort of extrasensory perception and these sort of psychic abilities and the ability to control the environment in this way. So you've got the word there, and you've also got the word, the she, which is pronounced S-I-D-D-H-E, I think, something like spelt that way, which is the reason why we used to go into the other world was to communicate, at least to communion with these otherworldly beings that we share this planet with on different frequencies. We have lost touch with the different frequencies of reality and become narrowly focused on this third dimension, as I'm sure you've already aware we've been touching upon, right? That's the Kaya City, and what I equate this was with, like, it's the third eye, but in the landscape, when I created this dragon yoga, I call it shamanic dragon yoga, dragon for yoga for short, is the fairy mounts, so these kind of places where you can just imagine these were used to kind of go into these otherworldly realms through these altered states, which lead to the transcendental, what I believe is a full dragon riding experience. And obviously, I mentioned King Arthur's full name, Pendragon. So Pen, if you don't know, is Welsh for head. Right? You get a lot of places like with Pen in the name, it means head. If you don't know, that's why Penguin is called Penguin, because it's white head. Gwyn being white, like Guinevere. Pendragon. So what you're talking about is King Arthur. What I believe is King Arthur is, in some ways, the synonymous with the dragon, and that's why you get these sort of legends of a sleeping dragon in the land. But also, King Arthur is sleeping in the land, and one day the dragon's going to wake up. One day, King Arthur's going to wake up and emancipate the land from invasion and stuff like this, or maybe the spelling invasion of language. And so it's basically, he represents, I believe, the consciousness, like that we have, that our divinity, our royalty, our sovereignty. Yeah, that's the word, right? Sovereignty. But it's that sort of consciousness that rides the Kundalini. You need these two things. So you can say divine masculine, if you like, for consciousness, divine feminine for the serpent, right? The feminine Shakti, So it's we are dragon riders, I believe. That's the point. And that's our shamanic heritage. And then wherever you go all around the world, there is this memory of dragons everywhere. I've never heard of any place that doesn't have a memory of dragons. Well, if they're mythical creatures, then why the hell has every single culture through all of time in the whole world come up with this specific creature? And they try and explain it away, it's just dinosaurs, or la la la. Like, always trying to explain away these really profound things, And so, I think the dragons are real. They are there. They do underpin this reality, this matrix, luminous matrix of reality that we call reality. But, they're obviously in a slightly different vibration, kind of weaving everything together. That's what I believe. But more than that, then we kind of have this serpentine energy moving through us as well. Right? As above, so below, as within, so without. Everything is spiraling. We've got this thing spiraling through us, whether we're consciously feeling it or not. Like I'm always kind of aware of it, but it is there, in all of us. I'm not indifferent. But it's not just that. Earth is kind of spinning. It's got that slight wobble as well. You've got the spiral of the Milky Way. So everything is kind of spinning, moving, spiraling into this whole universe. So the key has to be to sort of reclaim our intergalactic and interdimensional heritage to understand the embodiment of this spiral. Is this making sense? Yes. Oh, good. I wasn't sure. Fantastic. All right, good. Okay, so that's how I feel like it's coming up a lot at the moment, isn't it? This riding of the dragon in the Game of Thrones. And I don't know if you saw the last series, and there was 3 dragons riding out towards the end of the last episode. I was like, I got goosebumps, because that's the triple nature of the serpentine nature. You could say the triple goddess, but really it's the Ida, the Pingala, and Sushumna. In yogic terms, if you're familiar, the sun, the moon, and the neutral point. So always coming back to this number 3 and this number 7, right? When you look at anything real in the universe. So I'm like, anyway, back to so we start here at Kaya City. So we're riding our dragon. We're starting here, and then what we actually then do is go down into Kaya Pedri Fan. Kaya Pedri Fan is the base chakra, right? And for me, what I really equate this is with the primal mound of creation, which all cultures have as well. It's Mount Meru in Tibet, isn't it? And for me, in this country, that is, of course, what we now call Silbury Hill, right? And that's what I'm filming outside Silbury Hill, thinking that is our pyramid. Remember, it was the pyramid that woke me up, right? So it was always leading to this realization. there is this relationship between pyramids and water, right? And this downflow and this kind of upflow and this relationship between these two primal currents, right? It's all cosmic. It's always coming back to the interplay of the divine feminine and the divine masculine in cosmological terms, which is why it's perfect that we're focusing on this in these two Shine seminars, right? So yeah, it's really, we have to get that root. We have to find where we are. We have to come into our body. We have to remember that we are the earth. We are the earth. You know, that we're not just here. We are an extension of the earth as much as a hair is an extension of my body on my arm there. You know. So that's the way, that's the root. So we're basically spiraling in to get here. So you go down to Kaya Pedrifan, the mound of creation. Then you go all the way up to Kaya Viduit, which is the land of, well, they translate it as intoxication and drunkenness, but really it's talking about the mead, which is the oldest alcoholic drink, because obviously bees are omnipresent. We need them for most things that we eat, all the things they pollinate. You know, we wouldn't go far without them, let's put it that way. And which is why Simon Buxton, Becky's shaman, focuses on the way of the bee, by the way. Yeah, it's all about how we have used fermentation as our ancient rites to alter our states of consciousness in the same way that ayahuasca is used and San Pedro is used to this day in Central and South America, where I've been in the last few years. So that's been kind of inverted as well. This, you know, I genuinely believe that alcohol is meant to be a very sacred experience, a very healing experience, a very activating experience, something that connects us to goo. Yeah. So that's a little sideline about that. So we're up at this kind of crown chakra here, and then it keeps on spiraling in. So then it goes to Kaya Rigor, which is, you know, the Svadhisthana, the sacral chakra. And for me, I'm really thinking about the waters of the seven, which we have out there, and the Y, and the way they weave together to make the wyvern, right? The wyvern, the serpent, again, weaves its way through the lands. You have these words, weave, you have the words wyvern, they're the same root. You have the weave is the word in French. There's so many words which actually come back to this experience of the weaving, of the dance of the, you know, cosmic serpent of creation, which we embody, which we're connected to all universe through. The more we start to get that download, the more we can start to be a channel for that and realize ourselves fully and emancipate ourselves from these restrictions which we have chosen to break free from in this lifetime, right? So where do we get to? So Kaya Rigor, yeah, so I filmed in sort of Kewstoke for that, where these rivers come together. And then where we go, Kaya Galuth is the throat chakra, the name for the throat chakra in Taliesin's poem, I believe. And this is really, really interesting. And you're talking about this sort of sentinel, and all this is a garrison that this sentinel is leading of soldiers, and how none of them are speaking. It's sort of very profound. So it's obviously talking about the aspect of the throat chakra is obviously communication, communion, all of these things. And I was like, well, it's really, you could read a lot into that about, you know, what is not being said, but although the real wisdom is in the silence. Anyway, but then we go to Kaya Van Dui. And Kaya Van Dui, yes, is my favorite because this is the solar plexus, this is the divine masculine, this is the fire in the belly that leads us to where we ultimately are wanting to orientate our attention. And in the poem, he talks about the monks being irresponsible, I would say is a word. He said, slack are their shield straps, like that. I'm like, I get that. A shield does what? Protection. What is the most important thing to protect? Yeah, the heart, the wisdom of the heart. So, if your shield straps are slack, what does that entail? You're losing your grip on what is important. These Christians are coming in, and they don't know what they don't know. What they are eradicating in the process, of wiping out this ancient shamanic dragon-riding wisdom, right? That leads us to the heart. And that leads us to the heart, which is in the magical cauldron of the goddess of Kewstoke. And this, as I say, later gives rise to the sort of Middle Age Renaissance of the stories of the Holy Grail. And again, King Arthur's still involved. And it's like any quest, any great story is really always really just emulating this sort of quest for the Holy Grail, really, isn't it? Always coming back to this such a profound, innate story that is obviously pointing to this ultimate truth at the heart. How much time have I got? As long as I want. Woohoo! Gonna go all night, guys. There's something about taking it into the light in the morning, like into the sunrise, baby. We're going all the way, just like the old days. All right, so so that's really in a nutshell what I just sort of you could say remembered, channeled, whatever, this shamanic dragon yoga, which the Kundalini yoga I felt has led me to. I wouldn't have got there without the Kundalini yoga. I wouldn't have got there without the Kundalini dance. I needed these two ways of working with the energy. Let's call it the dragon energy, the serpent energy, in order for that download to happen. So all of these stories really pointed me to start to work with the dragon yoga. And then, as I mentioned, it was really Egypt. I don't think it's a coincidence that I had this fascination with Egypt as a kid, and why it was the Great Pyramid of Egypt that woke me up. Hello.
I've got a question.
Okay.
Is any of this super relevant to actually Kundalini? Because I reckon Kundalini experience going to happen to all of us anyway eventually, and actually we don't need to know. It's really interesting, it's like super interesting, but actually to know all this about the different chakras and the channels and the kind of qualities. But just wanting to say to anybody, if this is slightly above your head, don't worry, because Kundalini is just part of being in nature.
Yeah.
It's part of us being part of this planet.
Yeah.
And if we can just relax into being natural like ourselves without the conditioning that we do, it would just happen.
It would. It would. Yeah, it definitely would.
If it does happen, what happens then?
Yeah,
You have to deal with it. That's more what I'm interested in. What happens after you had a Kundalini experience?
Well,
And then you kind of, because people end up psychotic.
Yeah, the reason for that people become, thanks for your question, psychotic is precisely because our culture has eradicated the importance and the relevance or reverence of this energy. This is the elephant in the room that we always were through all of our human history, I believe, working with this energy. And it really is the elephant in the room that we're not, that it's not part of the, it should be part of the NHS, it should be part of the education system. This should be worked with. Because we have, as I say, all of these forces kind of stopping us from awakening, whether you can see it as intentional. Obviously, a lot of it at this point is not intentional, it's just unconscious because, as we are a species suffering from collective amnesia, for most of us, we don't know what we don't know until we wake up and remember some of it, which happens when you start consciously working with the energy, sort of override all of the hypnosis of the dream spell that our culture is so embedded in. Hi. Yeah. Yeah, well, I say the problem that's why it's a problem, because with the yoga, let's say, it's not just about awakening the energy. It's equally, if not more important, to prepare yourself for the energy. You have to be mentally stable. This is why we meditate and meditate and meditate. You can't be going off here and there and everywhere if that energy comes through, because it's going to amplify everything. And hold on a sec. And you need to be emotionally stable as well. All of this happens when you get the energy flowing, when more that you meditate. And a really big part is the strengthening of the nervous system to be a channel for the energy. So otherwise, it's just, it's just not, you're not going to hold the energy. We are born to have this energy, but as I say, because of all, as I say, the stuff that's happened, the trauma and that, this is why we need these techniques to prepare us. So it's like you gradually prepare yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually as you gradually awaken the energy. So that's why it's kind of, it does take that form. But the problems do a lot when you get something like, it's a really traumatic event and boom, suddenly your whole reality has changed in a moment. You can't cope with that sudden change. The energy that can come through can really make you go crazy. But that, as I say, if we had an understanding in our culture of what that was, it wouldn't be a problem. But then we'd all be working with it anyway, so the problem wouldn't be there. Does that answer? Oh, that answers the question. Oh, good. Anyway, so then I wanted to go on and talk about Egypt because I really believe that was the most profound culture that we ever had that existed. Now, if you know about Graham Hancock, and this is really how it started with me, in the 90s when I read Fingerprint of the Gods, and he talked about this civilization that kind of fell in 10,500 BC, that we sort of call Atlantis right now. And then it was Egypt that really was holding the light again for the people that were picking up the pieces once that civilization fell. And so what I started to work with was this sort of, what I call it, ancient Egyptian serpentine shamanism. And it was this in this form. But really this is the same thing. It's just rather than going into the other world, you're sort of going more into the cosmos. So I'm interested in our relationship with the cosmos. And I think there is something in us that knows, that we have come from the stars and we want to return to the stars. And obviously even this sort of Elon Musk kind of wanted to go to Mars. Let's just take that the superficial thing that he's doing. You could argue it's just we wanting to go back. But I would say you're never going to get very far on a rocket if you want to traverse the vastness of space and time. There's just no way. The only way you can do that is, I would believe, to create a wormhole. And I believe that we have this ability through, the worm is the serpent. The WYRM is this type of serpent that even Tolkien talks about that. Obviously Tolkien was talking a lot about bringing the profound nature of mythology into this country, especially England, because it's such a new culture, right? Since the Anglo-Saxons came in, let's say, and the unification of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. Where was I? So what I started to, so I talked a lot about the Kundalini dance and the earth, right? And in Kundalini dance, we're working with this earth energy. So we're not just with the base chakra going up, we're working with the energy from the earth. So what's that about? So that's about the geodynamic torque, which I believe is coming from the spinning of the center of the earth. And we can kind of feel this in some way. And when you harmonize with that, you've done a visualization where you sort of breathe and feel into the center of the earth, and then you bring it up through. I think that's a really, really profound thing. I've been doing that for 20 years with the Kundalini dance. But then I started to realize there was something very profound about that. When we do that, that gives us our kind of birthright, I believe, to be able to connect to the stars. So I believe that we have this ability to ride the Kundalini, create wormholes, and bend time and space. And so we can actually be anywhere, I believe, in time and space. And because, we are essentially non-local. Our consciousness is omnipresent. It's actually non-local. And then we're having this kind of physical experience. But we may as well just unwind that experience and rewind it to be somewhere else. Again, I'm making reference to the spinning, which I feel is also key. So I'm I have this thing where as soon as I realize something, I just create an online course about it and start teaching it. So I'm not necessarily an expert on this. This is just coming through. And my passion is just to share and put it out there, what I'm realizing. You can take it or leave it. not to put myself on a pedestal and say, I've got all the answers. I haven't. I feel like I'm just remembering, and I'm excited to share it with you guys because we're all one family. So then there's this something about most of the universe is either dark matter or dark energy, right? So there's this melanin in the brain, and then there's this neuromelanin in the brain, and kind of the cerebral spinal fluid, and all around the brain, we're kind of enclosed in this beautiful dark substance that we call melanin, neuromelanin. You've got melatonin as well, but it's all connected. And this seems to be very profoundly connected to the dark energy and the dark matter of the universe. And it seems to be that it actually folds and unfolds space and time into itself within the contours of the brain and the central nervous system and all of this thing. So it feels like there is actually something there that we are remembering. And these things become clearer and clearer the more you start to work with the energy. So the more that you can go into sort of dark space, have the room really, really dark, meditate in complete darkness, which is something I've always intuitively done. I don't know if any of you else have had this sort of obsession with being in darkness and just no light anywhere. I think this is really, really important. And let's not forget the Cathars and the Templars, and still to this day, I forget the tribe who are connected to the Mayans. They call us Little Brother, and they call themselves Big Brother, not the 1984 Big Brother. The Kogi tribe, yeah. Yeah, I believe, these are all people who worked with, spending a lot of time when you're forming, in your formative years, in complete darkness. And, and I think there's something very, very profound about that, where we suddenly sort of really let go of everything and are able to kind of reform into our divine selves. But when you do that at the beginning, in the Cathars would call it the consalamentum, wouldn't they? They would put their hand on the child's initiate's hand, and they would walk out of the cave like, I believe, enlightened, and by the parfait, the perfected ones. So all of this knowledge has really always been around us, but then it's just got consolidated more and more and more into the few. And now at this point, I'm not sure that anybody knows shit, but maybe, yeah, so it's all about, so it's about the darkness, it's also about the light. I said at the beginning, really it's all to do with light. At the end of the day, we have to find a way to sort of decalcify the pineal gland and get it to secrete again, which is one of the master glands, one of the divine glands we talk about in Kundalini Yoga. And, as I say, it's all around us, because we've always had this obsession with the pine cone, which is the symbol of the pineal gland, of the pineal gland. You see it on bedposts, you see it on fence posts, you see it in architecture. It was there in the Eleusinian mysteries as they used to dance the way to Eleusis from Athens with the thyrsus, which is a pine cone on a stick with an ivy wrapped around it, which is, always a symbol like the grape for the divine, the sort of twin-like nature, serpentine weaving-like nature of the Kundalini. So, yeah, it's been all around us. So all of these things happen when we start working with the energy, but we have to find a way. I do believe once we're in darkness, the pineal gland will just naturally decalcify anyway, and that illumination takes place. Let's see if I've missed anything else. I don't know if you guys know about the Dogon tribe in Mali in Africa. So these guys knew about Sirius A, Sirius B, Sirius C, the sort of orbit that it took, all of this stuff. And it's like, well, how did they know it? They say they came from ancient Egypt, from ancient Kemet. And so it seems to me that this sort of, I started to work with this thing with Sirius, because if you know about Egypt, you'll know that Sothis, which is Isis, and the whole of Egyptian culture was to do with the heliacal rising of the return of Sothis, this star system of Sirius, and it's like with the return of the goddess. Isis has come back, and there's something very profound about the black silt of the Nile Delta, that sort of that dark, deep, rich, feminine, you could say, soil that gives rise to all of the civilization, the most profound civilization, I believe, I'm a bit biased, that ever existed. And you have that memory in France as the Black Madonna, of course, where, Isis was still worshipped, and I think maybe even still is today. You still have the memory there of Mary Magdalene in that form, the triple goddess. as well, if you've been down to that region of France. Yeah? Okay, cool. Yeah, so what I realise is that I feel like that when we're in this relationship with Sirius, like there's some sort of like, some people have even said that we are orbiting around Sirius. We have this connection with Sirius. So I think we are very, very connected to Sirius in some way. And I think I think that cosmic cycle does take almost like one of the, I think it takes about 24,000 years. It's very, very similar to the precession of the equinoxes, which was 26,000 years. And these are the great ages of civilization, the great yugas. These are the sort of the memory that these ancient tribes, the ancient Egyptians and the Mayans, they all have this memory of this huge spans of time. So it's like this civilization, we're really in our infancy of remembering these things. Am I losing you or am I still with me? You're still with me. As I say, this is being recorded, and anything that you don't, just to take what you can, and that's always enough. So what am I saying in a nutshell? Shall I wrap it up? Well, I guess keep going. Go on.
Any thoughts on Kundalini and Green Man?
The Green Man? Yeah, I mean, the Green Man is in many ways the personification of nature, isn't he? And yeah, I sort of, I think I do need to research that more. I've got this sort of a green man, like literally, I've got Isis on either side, and then I've got the green man in the middle, like above my bed. And it's I'm sort of obsessed with this idea of like, this could be a whole other talk, by the way. Like well, in the Eleusinian mysteries, they were shouting this word, and I believe the word was Jack. And have this Jack in the green, which I believe is connected to the Green Man, right? And Robin Hood and all of these stories, I think, are pointing to a memory in this country, and in Britain especially. I mean, it's pretty universal, the Green Man, but we have this real memory of Jack in Britain and in England and Wales and Ireland and this sort of area. And so this is a whole other talk, but I feel like this story of like, it's like tangent here, Jack and the Beanstalk, is this sort of shamanic memory of the connection between heaven and earth, and how the Kundalini is that transitioning between the two worlds in the same way as Jacob's ladder. So I believe that they were shouting Jack, and if you do sort of play with this word, there is something about that jolting that the J curve takes, and into the Ak, which is like the breaking forward into another reality, which is something that the Jack in the box does. You have to get out of the box, of the confines of your current paradigm, in order to break free into the new paradigm of the new earth, which we're here to co-create in this moment, only place we have. So for me, I always go off and think about that kind of memory of the Jack, which is, I feel, there's so many stories about Jack. Jack and the Beanstalk is just one. You've got Jack and the Giant Killer. It goes on and on and on. It's all around us. And children's stories, children's toys. You've got the Jacob's Ladder is this toy as well. So for me, I always go to that. But there does seem to be a connection with St. George as well. And I was born at St. George's Day and the Green Man. And all of these things, actually, when you look into it, there's been a whole... Have you seen that book, St. George and the Green Man? No, yeah, check that one out. Anyway, but yeah, I wasn't prepared for that, was I? Anyway, yeah, I think I might try and wrap it up. But let's see. Look at my notes to see if I wanted to see anything else. I managed to cover a lot of it. So I didn't really talk much about sacred sites. I mentioned a few of them. But, just to reiterate, the importance of the energy that runs through the earth. And these are energy lines, we believe, work all the way through the universe. And so I'm calling them dragon lines, or dragon energy lines. And so it's like, I do believe that we can ride these dragon, once we find, and if you work with me, we find, you get your dragon and you find a way of going to these different places. And I would like to start working more like I used to do with the Kundalini dance, by going to these sacred places at sacred times, because then you get into the liminal state, right? The liminal state, when you're in sacred time, sacred space, to begin to work with the energy that we have, and then harmonize your energy with the energy that moves around the earth and moves around and the cosmos. So it's really, really important, I do believe, as we start to remember, to come to places like Stonehenge, to Avebury, to Stanton, drew whatever your local stone circle is at the times of the equinoxes and the solstices and the cross quarter points in between. And and I think that's something which we've always done. This is universal knowledge, and we're just like remembering. There's so much that's been forgotten, but never lost. Nothing that's ever real is ever lost, I don't believe. And the last thing I wanted to say really was I think someone mentioned EMFs, and so this, a lot of this energy is electromagnetic in ourselves in the universe, and this sort of being a conduit for electricity and to be able to magnetize and draw into our lives that which we want to align with and attract. And I do believe, because we have this sort of bombardment, my background's in telecoms and telecommunications. Yeah, I was the one building on this. We can protect ourselves from these fields as well. So another really important way of working with the Kundalini energy is that it becomes this toroidal field that comes up and out and all around us. And then we become absolutely impervious to, and there's nothing that can be created, I don't think, by technology that can come close to the power that we yield as sovereign divine beings of this energy that gives rise continuously to the entire cosmos and all its interdimensionality of this cosmic luminous universe. So that's that we've got all that power, and we've been talking about how we limit ourselves, and in this moment it's the only one we can really choose to emancipate ourselves from that. Thank you.
So just very quickly, I'm just going to say something quickly. I don't think you can really see this, but it kind of ties. This is the Shine Seminars flyer for Matara, but it leads from Mark's talk a little bit, in that this symbol here is the Celtic symbol for Bridget. Do anybody know who Bridget is? Yeah. So it's really powerful, this, but the word Britain comes from the Welsh mythological figure Bridget. And I've used that as the symbol for the gift from the Divine Feminine at Matara, because what fascinates me about Mark is he is reconnecting us to our own mythology, the Celtic mythology. And lots of people go to India, and they go to Norway, and they go all around the world, and we have our own. And in fact, there is a narrative that says that the original wisdom keepers, were the Celtic wisdom keepers, and it actually went out around the world, and the Druidic culture that was in Europe got absolutely battered by the Romans, because we had all the secrets of the Kundalini. And now all that knowledge is now coming back over here. And with Darren, with his ancestral work, and with Mark, and also I'm doing that as well, we're reconnecting to our own spiritual path in the past. And it's really important for us to know that we have an incredibly strong mythology in Britain. And we don't need to go to India or Norway or, we've got it all here. And there's just a quick story. I did my shamanic course in Glastonbury this year with the shaman of Avalon, Annie de la Vie, who is an incredible woman. And I had literally the most profound 3 days of my life, because I went to the Chalice Well, and I did my ceremony with the Chalice Well, and then I went round the corner to the White Spring. And I've been to the White Spring probably 50 times in my life, and it's never been open. It's never been open when I've been there. And Annie just said to me, let's just go around and see if it's open. And it was open. And Annie said, well, let's go in. And I went, okay. So I went in, and who's been in the White Spring? Quite a few people. Okay, so you'll all know then. So I walked in, and Annie said, come on, we're going to go and see Gwyn ap Nudd now. And I went, Gwyn ap Nudd? So I walked around the corner, and there's the effigy, the statue of Gwyn ap Nudd. I was like, oh my God, this is Herne the Hunter. This is the most amazing thing. I can't believe it. And he's Welsh. And we had a conversation. I asked why I was here and what I could do for the situation. And then Annie said, let's go around the corner. And around the corner is the statue of Bridget. And I was just like, this is just blowing my mind. it was amazing. So we went back to her house and we carried on with the course. And then later on in the day, I went down into the high street, and I was just on my phone outside this shop, and I was pacing up and down like this. And then I looked up, and there was this book that just said Celtic mythology in the bookstore. And I went in, and I went up to the owner, and I said, can I buy that book in the window, please? And he said, yes. And we got talking. And I said, have you got anything else on Celtic mythology? And he told me an amazing story that he'd spent 28 years in ashram, different ashrams in India, on his spiritual journey. And he came back a couple of years ago to Glastonbury, and he walked into this bookshop, and he went to the Celtic mythology section, and he started reading it, and he was like, this is exactly the same story that he'd learned from the Indian tradition. And he was so blown away, he bought the bookshop. So, and he says he gets so many people coming in, going over to the Indian and the Nordic and the Chinese, etc., and the Maori tradition. But actually, the Celtic tradition is as strong as any tradition. And it's a very, very powerful thing when you connect to that. It really it actually changed my life completely, because I realized who I was and where I'd come from. It's one of the reasons why Mark and I connected, because we just started talking about this, and the fact that he's translated the story of Taliesin and into the chakras that is a mind-blowing thing. That's a very, very special thing, because everybody knows the Indian version, but who knows the Celtic version? We've got it all here, so I just need to say that. It's a very, very important thing. So you know what? I'm so grateful for everybody being here today, especially the people who've been here before, but the new people as well. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. A big round of applause for yourselves. Thank you. And if you do want to come to Matara, and I'm not saying this just to be glib, the tickets for Matara will go very, very quickly. And as soon as I release them, if you feel